Hi, guys, and welcome to today's conversation. We got Lauren with us here, and we're going to be talking about human design. Two human design nerds over here. Hi, Julie. And we're going to be speaking about how to really unlock, your best performance, right? And your energy flow, so that you can really slay through your day and your business and your brand. And we're going to dive into all of that through human design. So, get your chart ready, have your questions ready. And Lauren and I are going to dive into this. But
Yay.
first, Lauren is going to tell us all about who she is and how she actually got into human design and everything else that she does.
Yes. Well, thank you so much for having me. I've been geeking out with your content for a while now, and you put
Yes,
something out there that said, "Hey, who wants to go live?" I was like, "Ooh, me." So thank you so much. I appreciate it.
you're
So who
welcome.
am I? Whew, that's a $6 million question. So when it comes to performance, we talk about that, right? That is kind of my whole lean in terms of how do we optimize performance through our own energy. So I grew up as a swimmer. I was a competitive athlete from the age of 6 until I graduated from university at the age of 22. And I was one of those rare beings of being a one sport athlete. That was my whole jam, actually, which is really interesting if we look at it from a design standpoint. Um, and then once I graduated from college, I thought I wanted to go to law school, but life had different plans. I didn't get into law school. So I went into human resources where I spent the majority of my professional career. Like anybody who kind of reaches that what the heck do I do moment in my life, was done with human resources. It was kind of the same shit, different day. And it was
Hmm.
just mind numbingly um,
Hmm.
boring, if I may say.
Hmm.
And I had this idea of, coaching was becoming very popular in the world of human resources. So before I decided to go out on my own, I thought, hey, why don't I go get my coaching certification so I can at least maybe start to dabble in some different things? Really funny from my design standpoint, I'm a line one, so I had to go get a foundation and I had to go learn and I had to go dig. And so when I did that, I found it was kind of this transformative kind of moment for me in terms of, and we'll talk about this probably like, how do I get out of my own way when it comes to judgment? And so I launched my own coaching business. I really started in the world of leadership development because that's what I knew. Then the 2020 Olympics hit, and I watched Team USA from a swimming standpoint, and actually any sport. It was kind of like, oh my gosh, like here is this like holy shit moment of like supporting athletes from a completely different point of view. So I dabbled with that a little bit. Again, it was kinda like, "This is great, and I love this, and I'm passionate about it, but it's just not hitting for me." And then lo and behold, in late 2021, maybe early 22, my, financial advisor actually introduced human design to me, and she uses it from a, "How do we build wealth and abundance from your energy standpoint?" And the moment that she put it in front of me, I was like, "Oh my gosh.
Hmm.
This is it. I've gotta understand more about this because it was the first time where I felt validated in my
Hmm.
quirkiness, my my differentiation, and then the more that I dove into it, it was like, "Oh my gosh, this is pure magic."
Absolutely is. I think all of us kind of like get that moment of like really feeling validated and seen and like kind of confirmed in who we are, but also in a way, I mean, at least for me as a line too, like I felt kind of defined, right? Like, oh, like I'm a manifesting generator plus a line too. Like this is, describing so much. And then as you go further into the centers and then the channels and then the gates, like, damn, the precision of this is incredible. And it's telling me exactly like where this aspect is in the shadow, right? The not self, and like where it's in the gift. And I know where I am on the spectrum, right?
Yes.
And so kind of, connecting to that also, like are all of the energy leaks that we also have as
Yeah.
by not being ourselves or having that kind of borrowed frequency, as you say, right? So can you tell us a little bit about how we can actually use human design to boost our performance and like basically just energy, like where can we find those energy leaks first and foremost, and then
Yeah.
how do we start kind of plugging them? We're going to get into that in a minute.
Yeah, I think from a performance standpoint, I always come at it from the lens of your not self, or borrowed frequency, as I like to call it first, because it's like being able to understand who we're trying to be helps unlock some of the patterns that we get stuck in. So I'll give you a specific example for me. I'm a simple split, and we'll talk about kind of what that means maybe moving forward. So I have a simple split. I need one gate to bridge like the two different energy entities that I have that aren't connected to one another. So I have those gates, right? And then my open centers are my open G, my open ego, my open emotional center, and my open head, right? So for me, where I get stuck in patterns that diminish my performance is when I make emotional decisions where I'm trying to prove that I know where I'm going and I can answer all the questions that get in my mind. And oh, by the way, I've got to prove that I'm skilled, talented, and charismatic, right? So when I started to really understand where I get in my own way, that helped to start uh, slowly erode where my energy leaks come from, or why performance seems so incredibly hard
Mhm.
sometimes, where
Mhm.
like we feel all of this resistance, and it's like, why do I always feel this way when I, you know,
Mhm.
making an emotional decision? Well, I have an open emotional center. Like I'm not here to be driven by my emotions, but
Yes.
I can be overwhelmed by my emotions, and it will override everything. And then I'm labeled the most emotional person in the room, or, whatever the case may be, anything that comes with an open center, right? Then you start to feel ashamed for feeling emotions for someone like me. And then you're like, okay, well, I don't know how to stop the emotion. It's all of these things where you start to feel like you're too much when it comes to sometimes your open centers and your open places in your energy, when really it's like, but then on the other side, when you're defined, it's like, well, I'm not enough over there. So that's where this kind of like rub when it comes to performance really comes. But for me, it's always about understanding where the heck our openness tries to override who we think we need to be
Yeah.
versus who we truly are.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. And so I want to kind of show people quickly on the chart so that they know what we're talking about, right? So
Yeah.
all of let me just kind of grab my computer in a better way. Hopefully maybe like this. Or maybe yes. So let's see. Oh, uh, there you go. There you go. So we have these open centers, basically, like the open head center I have over here, or this undefined root over here, right? So these centers basically are where we're very susceptible to like outside conditioning, right? And so
Yeah.
70% of the population has this open head center, right? The center for inspiration and ideas. And lo and behold, the majority of us really struggle with like shiny object syndrome, right?
Yeah.
And this is where we're kind of like constantly on the lookout outside of ourselves, right? And this is where we're basically leaking our energy and giving our power away. So this is key to really understand, right? The open and undefined centers are basically big energy leaks, as all centers can be, right, in their shadow expression, right?
Right.
And we'll get to that in a minute, but you know, being that like 70% of the population has an open or undefined head center, this is a big one for a lot of us. And this is where I see, you know, all of my clients, all of my students, you know, really suffering from that shiny object syndrome and like looking for inspiration, right? Like, what are other people doing, right? And then when you combine that with an open or undefined ego center, which 70% of the population has, which is connected to confidence, right? And self-esteem and self-worth, like, of course, you know, you combine those two and you're like, oh, I need to look at what others are doing, you know, get that inspiration from them. And then, you know, kind of what I'm doing isn't enough. What they're doing is much better. So I kind of go and I basically leak my power away in those places, right? And so this, like, these are the I guess the first clues that you and I use in our work because we both use human design with our coaching clients, right? It's to like really find those places where the energy and the power leaks are. so that we can kind of really like kind of stop that behavior, right? And kind of decondition from that behavior. So these are the big places. And then especially like performance wise, we also have like the four, whoops, the four motors. Wait, no, no, they got out a touch screen. I'm not used to it yet. But we also have the four motor centers, right?
Mhm.
The root center, the emotional center, the sacral center. Come on, there you go.
Mhm.
So, these centers basically are what drive us forward, right? And so, in these centers, if we have the certain, conditioning, um, it's really reflective in how we're like leaking that energy and power away. So, can you tell us a little bit more about that? Because I love that topic.
Yes. Oh, this one is so good. So I'll use kind of an example too. Is that sometimes, right? We this is the beauty of human design. It's also the curse of human design. Is that it's so nuanced and so detailed that you got to go down in order to come up. So when we're talking about kind of energy leaks and where we're giving away our power, a lot of times our openness can actually override the thing our definition. So in your example, right? All the things that are colored in your human design chart. So it's really imperative to really understand how those two things can how they come together, how they can like fight each other in a way, right? I think a lot of us will experience this inner tension inside of us, right? That we just kind of like walk around with every day. And part of that has to do with how your energy is, like what you're defined and what is open for you. Um, One of the biggest things that I've noticed in my own experience is that the emotional center or that motor is open for me. So what that means for that's a little less than half of the population. So what that means for us is that we don't have a consistent and reliable way of experiencing emotion. It comes in and it feels chaotic and emotions feel really big and we don't know what to do with them and we tend to have a very like fiery um output when it comes to
Hmm.
emotion, right? And so what happens is it's like that emotion keeps coming in and coming in and coming in, and because we don't really know what to do with it, in my experience I just shove it down, right? Woo, we're not feeling a darn thing. But take that and compared to the motors that I have defined, which is my sacral and my root, which are two very powerful motors. And so, in me, in my experience, when I have these energy leaks and I'm letting all these emotions in and trying to stuff them all down and don't know what to do with them, I recognize that what I've recognized in my own deconditioning is that it puts so much added physical pressure into my life. It's like I just keep filling up my cup and filling up my cup, almost sometimes unbeknownst to me of like how much emotion I'm really taking on. And our root center is the center for physical pressure. It's our adrenaline system, it's our stress system. And as I noticed in my deconditioning, like the more that I hold emotion in, the more that I can't express it, the more that I just ignore it, I put so much pressure on myself. And that's also another energy leak because when I feel a lot of physical pressure, that's when I'm a generator, so I'm here to respond, but I'll go and initiate all kinds of ideas and start new things because it's like, I don't know what to do with all this pressure. So I'm just gonna
Hmm.
go try to create something. And then I go to create something and it's like, oh yeah, I don't want to do that. That's terrible. That's awful.
Yeah.
And then come in with my, open ego center. Well, now I have to prove that I can commit to this. And oh gosh, if I give up now, then that says that I'm not, I don't have a ton of self-esteem and I don't feel worthy anymore. And it's like this whole compounding of misunderstanding, I guess is maybe the best way to put it in terms
Yeah.
of energy. And
Yeah.
then it's
And
like,
also, yeah, misuse.
yep, yeah, misuse and misunderstanding. And then that's where we create so much resistance in our lives when we're trying to operate through the energy of our openness when really we're here to operate through the energy of where all the things in our charts are colored in But when we don't understand the mechanics behind those things, that's when the misunderstanding and the misuse comes into play, and we feel so much stress and resistance and unworthiness and all the things that come with that.
Yeah. Which is why it's so beautiful to understand like the centers that you have and especially like in this case, of performance and like really being in flow and like operating in flow, especially as entrepreneurs, right? Like I have an open root center, right? And with that, I used to feel this pressure, right? Like this stress and pressure, right? And overwhelm. And like if there's a lot of things happening, I'm like, well, I just want to like step back and step away, right? So handling overwhelm was, one big thing for me as well. But on the other hand, like I needed to understand how to work with an undefined root center, right? Which is, I don't have the constant drive to move, to take action. I'm more like the true Taurus, and I am a Taurus, right? I'm
Yeah.
all about like that soft life, soft business, right? Lo and behold, my method is called the soft method, right? And I'm all about that. Like I'm anti-hustle, right? And I can't hustle even though I'm a manifesting generator, right? I have that defined sacral. Like, sure, I have the energy. I have another motor center defined, which is the emotional center. I have the ego center also defined. Like
Yeah.
I can use my willpower, right, and make things happen. And my emotions also drive me and pull me into action, right? All of it's there. But then this root is so powerful, right? And because it is undefined for me, like I would usually have a lot of, things to respond to, things to do, etc. But at certain times, it's like the drive wasn't there, right? I have the energy, but like just the drive isn't there. So I needed to start to really understand, how the root center operates. And I think I talked about this as well on my blog, the human design one. And I went into the blocks in each of these centers, so you can go and like read about that and understand what is going on within each of these centers, and like really go into like all of the energy leaks that you have in there, and like what is the best way to operate. But like then once we understand like how these centers actually get activated,
Mhm.
we can start to leverage that, right? So with, for example, the sacral, which we share, and 70% of the population are generators or manifesting generators, right? So for us, like our energy really gets activated in response, right? And so with that, it's like, someone asks you for something, right? It's always like if I'm doing something on my own, like I have a project that I'm working on for my own self, it's like I can kind of procrastinate on it, right? I don't feel that natural pressure because I have an undefined root center, right? I don't feel that pressure to move. But when a client comes to me and they're like, I need something, boom, I'm on it. Like immediately. There's no procrastination, no nothing. Like I'm taking action. But I would shame myself for operating this way. And it's like, what is it with you, Eva? Like, are you lazy? What is going on? Like, why are you, procrastinating on your own things, but working so hard for clients? Is it like a mindset issue? Is it like whatever it is, right? But then I actually understood what was going on and how my energy works and ebbs and flows over here, right? And then I learned to not shame myself when I was, in the down kind of energy, right? And actually use that for different types of work, right? On a specific project, right? Like let's say we're planning like a whole funnel or something.
Yeah.
Like, okay, let's use those days to just think through things and plan things, right? And then on the days when I actually feel a surge of energy, I really feel motivated to sit down and work on it. Awesome. I can just like boom, 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 get it done, right?
Mhm.
And so I'm just kind of like, waiting for that buildup of that pressure energy. And this is what's going on in the undefined and open centers. We're like waiting for that buildup in there, and then it kind of gets expressed, right? And
Yeah.
so this is like super powerful to really understand and have compassion for yourself,
Yes.
right? With how your energy is operating, so that you're not shaming yourself, you're not forcing yourself and shoulding yourself into taking a specific type of action or a specific way of taking action,
Mhm.
right? But understand how your energy ebbs and flows so that you can actually work with it in the best way, right? Instead of overexerting, right? And depleting that energy, right? And kind of like, messing everything up. And
Yeah.
I think women understand this the best because we have our own 4 cycles throughout the month, right? And so we know, right, the menstrual cycle is like really like winter time and we really want to go in. Right, and when we're ovulating, we're, like, out and about and very extroverted, right? So, you can't push extrovert like, that kind of a behavior when you're in your winter cycle, right? And it's the same thing with our energy centers in human design, right? So, once you understand how these cycles work within each center, you can actually, like, optimize your monthly schedule, right? Not just, like, your daily schedule because it doesn't work on a 24-hour basis, right? It's more on a longer term basis, right? So you can optimize around, your weeks and your months, right? And really leverage, the energies and the ebb and the flow, right?
Yes. You bring up a great point in terms of kind of how sometimes that shame settles in when we don't understand the mechanics of whether it is what's defined in our chart or what isn't. Um, and I think oftentimes that affects our performance or can negatively
Mm,
affect our performance. One of the greatest kind of examples for me is having grown up as an athlete, right? I spent 20 years doing the same thing every day. I could get up, I could go to practice sometimes multiple times a day. I had the drive, I had the commitment, I had all of these things, right? It never dawned on me that I might struggle with commitment in other areas. Because in my mind, it was like, oh, I stuck with the same thing for almost 2 decades. And it wasn't until I got into my adult life where I started to shame myself when it was like, "God, I really just don't feel like doing anything today." I'm so used to like always being on and always being active. And yes, that's important for me as a part of my design. But I would shame myself when I was, an adult and, now I have children. Like, I want to do nothing. I don't want to speak to anyone. I have no commitment. I have no willpower to get up and do what I'm supposed to do every single day. And that's when I would start to shame myself of, well, no, Lauren, you spent all that time being so active and doing all these things. You need to keep being that way in your life. That's the only way that you're successful, right? It was all of these messages in my mind. And it was kind of like, yeah, as with an open ego, I'm not going to be consistently committed to things. But when we understand the mechanics, it's like, oh, but when it's correct for me, I will be able to commit. I don't have to commit to
mhm.
everything.
Exactly. Exactly. And it's that, yeah. And it's that kind of like energetic response that we're also looking for, right? Especially again, as for us generators and that sacral, like, is it activated? Is it like, oh, hell yes. And
Yeah.
we all know these moments, right? In our lives when it's like, someone offers us to do something and it's like, oh my God, I can't wait to jump on this thing, right? And like you're immediately like up and at it. Whereas other times you're like, sure, like, you're more like a maybe, or maybe out of obligation, you're saying yes, or like, I should be excited about this. This should be a great opportunity for my business and whatever, and like on paper, right? But something inside of you is not jumping at it, right? Your energy is not getting activated to go after this, right? And so, like, you need to understand this and kind of work with this, right? And leverage this basically and understand when your body is saying, like, yes, I'm fully behind this, which means that me going into this is going to feel so easy. Like
Mhm.
other people looking from the outside might be like, oh my God, this is so hard. You're doing so much. You're active all day, like whatever. But, like that must be so hard and so demanding. And you're like, doesn't feel like it. To me, it's like I'm enjoying this thing, right?
Yeah. Yes.
And also, like, on the other hand, there's for those who don't have, for example, the sacral center defined, but maybe have like 50% of the population an emotional center defined, which is also a motor center.
Mhm.
Like, I can't really differentiate specifically, like inside my body, between the responses of the two, but I kind of feel like the emotional center as well is a little bit acting like a sacral, right? Which is like, oh, I'm excited about this, right?
Mhm.
Like, this seems like it's going to be a great feeling experience, right? That like this thing that I'm going to go into is going to feel great, right? To work on, to engage in, whatever it is. And those good emotions like really get me, moving, right? That motor gets activated and gets me moving in that direction, right?
Mhm.
And so it becomes that much easier. But also at the same time, I started to understand that how I'm perceiving something can have a big effect on it, right? And so, sometimes certain actions, we may perceive as like not that fun or whatever, right? And we kind of procrastinate on them, right? And so, like, this is something that I do with my clients. It's like a little bit of an audit. Like, how does this thing look like in your head, right? This is a little bit of that NLP, neuro linguistic programming, right?
Mhm.
Understanding the mental map, so to say, like how is categorizing and describing things in the head, right?
Yeah.
And so if this action, this thing doesn't really look appealing, right? Or you anticipate that the journey is going to be like hard and arduous and like boring or whatever it is, like, of course, you're not going to go after it, right? But it's sometimes just a matter of perspective, right? Sometimes I have been through this situation and you haven't, and you think it's going to be so overwhelming, too much, too hard, whatever. And then I come to you and I'm like, girl, this is freaking easy, actually. Like, it's just an illusion, right? People come to me and talk about Pinterest, for example. Like, I'm like, oh my God, I don't know how to get started. And it looks so overwhelming and so many things. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Pinterest is super easy. You can get it set up in a day, right? And then it's like, "Oh, really?" And then I describe to them what's going on, and it's like, "Oh, well, actually, now in my mind, I see it differently."
Mhm.
And this perspective shift, right? And this feeling shift about it gets them then activated, right? And gets that emotional energy, right? And that emotional center kind of activated, right?
Yeah.
And so, like, we can work with things. We can, when you understand them, all right, we can work with them, we can manipulate them, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, get the best possible outcomes and create, sustainable actions for ourselves, right? And with that, like, really boost our performance, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. And I always love hearing about, the experience of the emotional wave from emotionally defined people.
Yeah.
Because it's so incredible. I both my sons, are emotionally defined, and it's like sitting back and just, like, watching it. It's like, "Oh, okay." It's like sometimes I can see them go through and they have 2 different waves, right? They're defined
Mhm.
differently. So that can be a bit of a challenge for me sometimes. But it's a beautiful thing. And being able to, like you talked about before, like the shadow of not being emotionally defined is like you get so consumed in the emotions around you. Like you identify with them and it's like, I don't know how
Mhm.
to make sense of these things. But when you start to create a little bit of distance, the gift is one, being able to experience all waves that are around you. And two, then being able to watch someone go through their own wave and the amount of like aha moments you have as you experience that decision point from a number of different emotions is beautiful.
It can be also very challenging and it's a
Yeah,
roller
yeah,
coaster. I have a
yeah.
very defined emotional center. I have all the four waves, right? So all four.
Cool.
Yes. Thank you very much. Yeah. Just like you have a very defined
Thanks.
spleen and you have everything in there.
Yeah.
But it's, also to kind of talk about this because this emotional center is so incredibly powerful.
Yeah.
Um, I think that, and this is why I love EFT tapping, emotional freedom technique, right? Our emotions, as you said at the beginning of our conversation, right? Like you being, open or undefined there is like you're kind of collecting emotions from outside of you and you can sometimes carry them with you, or actually a lot of times, right?
Yeah.
So I know that, like, for example, with my ex, like I would get into a mood, something would kind of pass through me, and then, okay, I'm fine, right? But then later on in the day, like she would hold space for me, right? And, help me kind of move through it. But then later in the day, she would get in a bad mood. And
Yeah.
I was like, where is this coming from? It's like she was great before, right? And then I started to realize how she just kind of like absorbed that, right? And took that with her. And she didn't understand that it was coming from that situation from before, right? And that she kind of soaked it up like a sponge.
Mhm.
And, as you said, like, because you guys don't really understand, so to say, emotion as much as we do, because it's constantly present for us to
Yes.
observe and play with, right? Like you really need to develop even better like systems to clear away the emotions. And so, like, EFT tapping is a great one if you know which specific emotion is, coming through, right? Maybe I'm like frustrated, maybe I'm overwhelmed, maybe I'm anxious, maybe I'm sad, like maybe I'm angry, whatever it is, right? We can work with that. But if you don't, like, breath work is the simplest and actually the fastest and the easiest way to get your nervous system back into balance, right? Into that parasympathetic state, and
Mhm,
from which you have all of your resources back online, right?
mhm,
None
mhm.
of them are dormant. Like, everything is back online and your emotions are clear.
Yeah.
And my favorite one is, especially for that emotional healing, is the circular breath work, or also called conscious connected breathing, which is just in and out through your mouth or nose with no pause, right? So you can, YouTube that, check it out. Breathe with Sandy is amazing. He uses it a lot as well, but like really clearing out your emotions in that way so that you can just literally just read and get on with your day. So I like that's one of the key tools that I give to all of my clients, especially. I mean, both the defined and the open ones. It doesn't really matter, right? But
Yeah.
you guys really use it to kind of like cleanse everything that is not yours, and us defined ones use it to kind of like get that roller coaster turmoil tornado inside of us, like to
Mm,
calm it down,
yeah.
right? Which is absolutely what we need. And this is one of the things that really kind of gets in the way of performance,
Mhm,
right? Like, I'm not in the mood, right? Or something messed up my mood because it happened during the day, right? And so now you're kind of like out of balance. Now you have looping thoughts, anxious thoughts, frustrated thoughts, whatever it is. And now the rest of your day is trash,
mhm,
right? Like, no performance at all, but you need to get things done, right? You're an entrepreneur, you're busy, there's like lots to do. So you don't have the luxury of always just, kind of, getting your foot off the gas. Like, you need to keep going. So how do you keep going? Right. So that breath work is absolutely key. So that's like one of my go-to, like, tools in my back pocket that I always use. But if there's a big emotion that we can define, then EFT tapping is absolutely incredible and so easy to both regulate your nervous system at the same time, right? Through the tapping, and also voice things out, right? Tap and rant, right? And get over the negative
mhm.
emotion, right? And step into the positive, empowering one, and actually be able to move on with your day, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
So you actually had a post about, was it this morning or sometime relatively
Yes.
recently, of like, sometimes it truly, sometimes it really is that simple. Sometimes, like,
Mhm. Yep.
just breathing and finding a rhythm inside your own body and slowing down, right? I think that also is a part of what inhibits our performance, is that we're all so in a rush to do the thing. But the world is emotionally defined, and emotionally defined, there is no truth in the now, right? So we're all here under the influence of emotions, and that's okay. It's just as long as we can,
Manage
like,
them.
yeah, manage them. We don't actually ever have to really make sense of them, but as long as we can manage them, hey,
Yeah.
we've won a little bit.
Yeah. It doesn't matter where they come from, right? It really doesn't matter. And as an overthinker myself, like I have also a very defined Ajna center, right? And I also grew up, in a family of engineers. So like I would overthink everything, right? And I would stay up here and I didn't really understand my emotions. So understanding, first of all, the emotional waves, right? And I talked about them also in my publication. So you can go and check that out. But also like understanding how the waves function, and it doesn't really matter where the emotion comes from. Like, you don't need to think about it. You don't need to think about which past event triggered this or whatever it is. It does not matter. All that matters is that you either breathe through it and release that emotion, right? Or that you tap and rant, right? And literally say what you're feeling, like F this and F that, and the hell with this, and like, blah blah blah, whatever it is, right? That you're feeling in the moment. You get to tap that away, and get to actually access the deeper emotion that is below it, right? And then from there actually finally move into that kind of positive thinking, right? That you should be in, but you can't be in because your nervous system is dysregulated, right? And it's causing, the thoughts to
Yeah.
spiral, right? Or rumination. And it's just kind of like throwing you in this tornado, right? And you need to actually say what you need to say, right? Voice out, those thoughts and those emotions. And actually, finally, then you will be able to naturally access, right? That positive way of thinking, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's super, super powerful to tap into all of this and to really understand like how the energy like ebbs and flows and
Yeah.
goes throughout
Yes.
the whole design, right?
Yeah. It's unreal.
Awesome.
And you talked about before, right? You had mentioned environments. Um,
Mhm.
and when you understand, like, we are all here to actually operate in very specific environments. And oftentimes it's understanding the type of environments that you're meant to be in that can actually lift your performance, dare I say, without really doing anything.
I mean, other than setting up the environment or moving to an environment that is like that, right?
Y-
That's that.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. And it's interesting too, is that, it can kind of be found in two, I'll say two different places in your chart, right? So when you're looking at your natal chart or your chart that comes, is like you have two nodal environments that say, hey, this is the kind of energy and kind of people that you're here to interact with. I think you and I have talked about this. I'll give an example. Like, I can actually I'm here doing it, you'll understand this, we can break this down for anybody who may not, who's listening, is I'm here to be in, 5-2 environments, so surrounded by a lot of projection, right? Surrounded by, a lot of people who can bring practical solutions, who are natural talents in things, but also gates 53 and 54 are part of my, north and south node on my personality side, so I'm here to be in pressurized environments, right? And then on the other side, it's gate 61 and 62. So, here to be among gate 61 is what? Inner knowledge, inner truth. And gate 62 is all the details, right? Uh,
yeah, I'm
yeah,
just kind of like showing the chart here and then showing the nodes over here, the south and the north.
yes. But then you were also talking about before too, and I think you mentioned on here of being in shores. And then we
Yes.
actually can go to the physical environment that we are here to be a part of. And I don't know if it's natural or artificial for you, but I'm here to be in valleys,
Mhm. Mhm. Yep.
just
And
sitting in
this
the
is
middle and
this is such a powerful thing as well. Like when I found out this part of human design, and not to claim that I specialize in this and that I really go deep into this, but like this was so powerful to really understand. And I also talked about this on my publication, so you can find that out as well. But like for me, being the shores, and I can't remember if I'm a natural or artificial. I think natural. Um, but like, why did I always have a pull towards shores? Ever since I was a kid, I always wanted to be on the shore, right? Whereas some of my friends are like, "Ugh, I care about the beach. I want the mountain, right? Okay, mountains, there we go, right? So understanding that environment, but also understanding how it reflects in our space, right? And so, like, how we can organize our space is no longer just feng shui, right? But it's also this. And so, for me as a shore person, right? I love to be in the in between spaces. So, like, let's say I go to work at a cafe, like I always love to sit next to, the window, right? And so I can be like as close as possible to the in between space, right? So, like, that's something there. Or like sitting right next to the window, right, in my home or something like that, right? So like understanding that means that I can kind of tailor my environment to it. And also you mentioned kind of like the definitions, right? So I'm a triple split definition. So there's lots of, I have channels, if you guys know what channels are. And so like I have channels that are kind of broken up. Like if I were to connect, a certain two gates here, it will create a full flow, right? So I need three little channels to connect everything. So this means that like I really operate well in groups, right? Where I can, kind of have multiple people and their influence, right? And their gifts and talents and channels kind of complementing me and mine. And so I love to actually go out and, kind of be in environments where, again, like working at a library, working at a cafe or whatever, where I can kind of like absorb other people's energy in that way, right? So for us who are a triple split, we love being in big groups and kind of connecting, right, with others and kind of giving ourselves that energy boost, right, through that. Whereas like a simple split like yours, you may have your perfect person to co-work with, right? And it's like, oh my God, my best friend, she's the one, right? Lo and behold, that's why she's your best friend. And
Right.
like whenever I sit down and work with her, it's like things get done,
Mhm.
right? Like I finally have a productive day. I was like slacking all day, and now I'm really being productive. Like yes, because she literally gives you the thing that you're missing to complete the whole connection.
Mhm.
And like everything finally clicks into place, right? So those two other things, the definition and also the environments, are like so powerful for that performance, right? And just
Yeah.
kind of tailoring our environment or being with the right people to, to really step into that flow and
Yeah.
activate our energy, right?
Absolutely, 'cause, similar kind of similar to you, right? So, I'm here to be in valleys and in wide valleys. So, and I'm not an expert in this area of human design, but I know enough to be somewhat dangerous, is I remember if I'm in an environment where it's, like, kind of a wide open space and I can just 'cause it's a right, arrow for me, so that means I'm not an active participant. When I can just sit in a space and just kind of people watch and be in the corner so that I can see out and I can see everything going on. I don't know what it is, but there is something that just kind of, like, clicks in me that's just
Mhm.
like, "Oh, okay. Well, I see what's going on," right? And it's this, like, I have a lot of logical energy in my, uh, chart, so it's like, "Oh, I see the patterns. I see the patterns that are working. I see the patterns that aren't working." Um, but again, in terms of performance, what I found once you kinda learn this information, you can then go back and look at instances in your life and kinda have this realization of, "Oh, that's why that really
Uh-huh.
didn't work as well as I thought it was going to or wanted to." And this is gonna sound so woo-woo to a lot of people, and I understand that. But with environments, and I need to be able to, like, see everything. The last corporate job that I held, it was a very compartmentalized building. It was, like, just room after room after there was no, like, wide, expansive area at all in this building, and I also have an open G, so environment is like, physical environment is very important to me. I I felt so uncomfortable. I felt so, like, stifled, I guess is a good word,
Mhm.
and I couldn't I performed so terribly in this job, and it was one of those moments where I was like, "What is the problem here? Like, why do I
Mhm.
feel like I can't break out of this?" And that's when I look back and I was like, "Oh,
That makes
yeah,
sense now.
that environment was not at all what works well for me." And it's funny because like the job before that, I worked in a very modern building. So it was one of those like built to be very wide open spaces. And, there were more cubicles than there were offices. There were only offices on the outside of the building. And so everything else was kind of just like in the middle. And I used to just go, you had co working spaces there. So you could just go work wherever you wanted to work. And that was amazing. Right. And I was like, oh, okay. I can see how this all pieces together. And it goes back to performance. And oftentimes it's our body telling us, like, this something isn't working here, but logically, it's like, "Well, no, you should be able to work in any environment that you're a part of," or, "You should be able to work with anyone that is on your team." Well, no, there are gonna be people on your team that do this to
Yep.
your energy, and you do
Yeah.
that to their energy. And that's why it's so incredible to understand kind of mechanics, because then you really can start to be intentional about, if you're a leader, how to set up your team. Or if you're on a team, is to work with your leader or as a business owner to say, okay, how do I set up an environment that's going to be good for me? Or
Mhm.
how do I work on the things in my business that are aligned to what I want to do? How do I outsource the things that keep me stuck in this, like, I should, or I need to, or I have to prove, or whatever the case may be? It's when you start to understand these mechanics, you can actually like free up your energy, which then by default optimizes your performance.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And yeah, to also to just like to play with that is like we naturally, especially like if you're working from home, right? It's so much easier because you naturally gravitate towards your environment, right? And kind of like being in that, like caves people, like
Mhm.
they love to be in the corner and always like, having the door the other side and like seeing the door, right? And not having the door behind them, right? Me is a line too, as well. Like I don't like to be watched while I'm working, right? Like, so like I always close like the windows or the blinds or the things like that when I'm going through my own like kind of somatic work, right? And doing my dance or my breath work or things like that. Like I don't like to be observed, right? Unless I actually signed up for that, right? And
Mhm.
working with a coach through that kind of process, right? And kind of, yeah, I'm giving you permission to do that, right? So like I think we just naturally gravitate towards creating our own environment, right?
Mhm.
When we can. But when you also understand it, then that's when you actually double down on it, right? And start to create it or go after it wherever you are, right? So you can help yourself and kind of boost your performance through it.
Yeah.
And I think to just kind of like wrap up this beautiful conversation, and guys, let us know if you have any questions. Drop it in the chat, or later on if you're watching this at the blog, absolutely drop it in the comments, and we'll answer for you. But the other thing that really plays a role in all of this is kind of understanding the energy and the power leaks that we have in our centers and in the gates themselves. So before we started this chat, we were talking about the gate 58, for example, that we share, the gate of vitality and joy, but also it has this whole, not enoughness, right? And the shadow, it's like, this is not enough. There's a lot of perfectionism, right? Because
Yeah.
this gate is all about optimizing for like ultimate joy and harmony, right? And so we want everything to be optimal. We want everything to be kind of like perfect, right? Because we know when that is achieved, like everything just flows and there's no more kind of effort, needed, right? And so like we want to work on a lot of things, but then in the shadows, we really are like, it's never enough, right? So for me, the thing that kind of comes and goes, right? And then I've learned to work with were these thoughts of, I'm working on something. Let's say I'm working on a piece of content, right? And I would finish it up and it's like, yeah, it's good, but I don't know if it's going to be enough, right? And so like that was the kind of the thought that would accompany, right? The affirmation that would accompany what I'm doing, right? And so like, okay, this piece of content is good, but I don't know if it's enough for it to, convert. And so, lo and behold, it was a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? It wasn't enough. And then the open head would be like, okay, but now I need to look outside and find, what is the missing piece? What is the answer? And so, like, going and buying the courses and sessions and coaches and like all of this stuff. And thankfully, I did figure out what was going on. I did find the missing pieces and the gaps and all of it, right? But at one point, like, I realized, like, I have everything there. Why am I still looping this thought?
Mhm.
Right? And then I had to basically just kind of very, very simply brainwash myself through using robotic affirmations, right? Repeating the affirmation, the thought that I actually want, right? Like focusing my RAS, my reticular activating system, right, in our mind, which is in charge of what we focus on, and getting it off the negative focus and onto the positive focus, and realizing, yeah, this is good enough,
Yes.
right? This is absolutely good enough. And like, this is going to work. I have everything in place and whatever else I needed to actually realize, right? Not like, it's not an illusion, it's the truth. But you choose to forget the truth, right? And focus on the negative, right? That's kind of like the shadow, right? And so you can also understand through your own design and looking at also the gates that you have in these centers, like what are the things that you're looping in, right? And how you're kind of giving your energy away through there, right? Lauren understands really well the spleen center, right? Which is the center also of fears. I have the only one that I have in there is gate 44, which is amazing at picking up patterns, right? Like that's why I love playing the Sherlock. I love that. Like that's my obsession. But on the other hand, it has the fear of the past repeating itself. So one of the main things that I worked with and I've used EFT for was goal trauma. And again, I talk about this inside of my publication. You can literally search for goal trauma. And so it's like previous experiences that have led to disappointments that are still lingering that I didn't release from my system. Right. And so now my performance is impacted by this because now instead of going all in and being like kind of gung ho, if that's the right word, about something, right? A project, an offer that I'm launching, whatever it is, like I'm holding back. I'm like, sure, but maybe it's not really gonna, pan out as well as I think it is. So I'm not gonna get my hopes up too much. And then basically it slows you down, right? And it basically just has you not playing all in. And
Mhm,
that's not how you win, right?
mhm.
And so I really needed to release, right, the weight of past disappointments, right? And so EFT tapping was absolutely incredible and such an easy tool to do this, right? So that again was like another aspect of kind of our human design,
Yeah,
impacting our performance, right? As well as, our real world experience and, traumas, whether they are big T traumas or small T traumas,
yeah,
right? Just like goal trauma is a small T trauma. You wouldn't consider it a trauma, but it is, right?
yeah, yeah.
Trauma is any event that is not processed, right?
Yes.
So we need to, release those as well. And I think again, you with that very defined spleen, you understand what it's like to be under the influence of so many fears kind of, yapping in there, right? And kind of preventing you from going all in and making you, a little too hesitant, right?
Yeah.
Or whatever else it might be, right?
Yeah, and you wrap up the conversation so beautifully is that we can get, um stuck in a I don't wanna say negative, but maybe, not optimized performance loop when it comes to our definition too, right? Yeah, that's why it's really important to understand both sides of the equation of where we're open and actually what we have defined. Because I do have all 7 gates of my spleen. Is it 7? Yeah, all 7 gates in my spleen defined, and some of them are defined multiple times. So I've got the fear of inadequacy of gate 48. I've got the fear of tomorrow in gate 57. I've got the fear of past keep coming up in gate 44. I've got the fear of responsibility in gate 50. I've got the fear of failure in gate 32. I've got the fear of never finding a passion in life in gate 28. Oh, and I have the fear of judgment and authority in gate 18. I, those have shown up in my life all the time, and I really actually wanna go watch, or read, your gold trauma because when you said that, like, that really resonated with me when it came to my performance as an athlete. Like, that was
Mm.
always in the back of my mind, and that gate isn't necessarily really tied to competitiveness, so it does point at the ego, so maybe a little bit, right? But, like, what would come up in my mind of like, "Oh my god, I don't want my disappointment of not swimming the time that I wanted to swim come up again last time. I don't want anyone to remember, that I didn't swim well." That was, like, in there all the time, so was the fear of failure. um, and the fear of inadequacy because that's tied to talent, right? And it was always like, well, no, I can do it in practice, and but what if I can't do it in a meet? And then what does that mean about me? And it's like,
Mhm.
oh God, right?
Mhm.
It's just the fears playing around, and so that is still part of my deconditioning. Is like, how do I, because they're active all the time?
Yeah.
How do I quiet that?
Mm. Well, it really is all about the release, right, of the pent up emotion, right, that is under it. right? And the past events that have happened or the future, right? If we're fearing the future or responsibilities, like that's the classic fear of success, right?
Yes.
Whatever that may manifest as, like, fear that you're going to be too overwhelmed with things, right? Or that you won't be, good enough, connected to that ego center, right? Et cetera, right? And so, what I love about this process of using EFT tapping is that I always describe the after effects of you entering this state of no big deal, whatever. Like,
Yeah.
that's how I describe it. Like, you literally enter all of a sudden, this thing is like, whatever. Like, so what? Is you're just kind of flat about it,
Yeah.
It's like, well, this might not pan out that well, so what? I'm just gonna go after it anyways,
Mhm.
right? It's like no longer does this thing kind of like, you know, cloud you, right? And press you down. It's like you're kind of above it, right? It's like you're no longer kind of under it. You're now above it and you can see clearly. And again, because your nervous system, right, is finally in that, parasympathetic, like rest and digest, like that perfect, homeostasis state. Like now all of your resources are online, so you're also no longer looping in these thoughts because that's what happens. You're constantly looping the same freaking thought over and over. It's like nothing new, right? But you're finally like out of that. And you can, instead of like being like this and seeing the situation like this, you finally see everything.
Mhm.
And it's like, oh, wait, actually, I am good enough for this. And I do have these resources here. And I do know these people over here who can help me. And I do remember that I have that, course from over there that will help me set up this funnel, whatever the hell it is, right? You're back online,
Yeah.
right? All of you is there finally and working towards that goal that you have. And it's no longer such a big deal that
Mhm.
you feel like immediate as you look at it, your system is like this, right? Dysregulated. No, now you're regulated and you're looking at it and now it's as it should be, right? You're watching it like an objective observer, right? It's no longer you all panicking. It's like, your coach, right? Right? It's like me watching the situation and being like, what's the big deal about it, right? And now you can see things, so to say, from my eyes, right? And be detached from it and
Yeah.
finally have that, like, okay, no big deal. Let's go after this, right? So what if this happens and blah, blah. And so like that's the beauty of it. And the beauty also is that it doesn't take ages. Like that's what I love about EFT tapping. It's like you get to clear away, right? The whole, experience or, the past
Uh-huh.
or the anxiety, like the what if thinking, right?
Mhm.
You get to voice that out. You get to reach the deeper emotion, right? For example, in anxiety and like what if thinking, it's all about what's at stake, right? So like what if, okay, that's the thing that you want to release and speak out loud. It's like, well, actually there's a lot at stake, right? That's like the underlying emotion that we're reaching in the second stage, right? The second round of tapping. It's like, well, there's actually a lot at stake for me here and no one knows, right? And no one knows how much I'm carrying.
Right.
And like the release there, the tears, the weight that gets off you, like it's incredible. And then, only then can you be like, okay, right? Like you reach that healthy state and the healthy state of thinking, right? Which we then can continue to tap in, right? And kind of brainwash yourself because sure, you kind of release this, but you need to get your system again and your mind, your reticular activating system focused on that new thought, right? Brainwash yourself a little bit with it. So, you may enjoy also doing subliminal kind of audios, right?
Mhm.
Awesome.
Yeah.
But you can also very simply just do a little round of positive tapping to
Yeah.
remind yourself, right? And, although what you can find online is, good, what is best is actually finding your own, most empowering sentences and phrases, right? So for me, I love to, for example, like no one uses this, but I love constantly starting with the God state, remembering that we and that I am a fractal of God. And, like God is omnipotent, right? And limitless and powerful. And I am the creator of my reality. My reality is a mirror to my thoughts and my being, right? Okay, I'm reminded of my power. I'm no longer just a little human being. Like I'm entering this whole other state. And from that state, I can now tap in what I want to tap in. Like, hey, like this is not enough from before that I said from gate 58. It's like, this is enough. And I can remind myself, like, girl, you got all these avenues that opportunities can come from, right? Let's say, if we're talking about like, business and money and all that,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
clients can come from here, and you have thousands of pieces of content that people can find you through. And like, you've done such an amazing job, and this testimonial and that client result and this, like, oh my God, let me remember all of it.
Yeah.
Okay, let me remember and actually focus on the good things, because my dysregulated system and my reticular activating system are used to the negative.
Yes.
So it's just about then, tapping in the positive and finally anchoring it in until it just becomes second nature. And now you're constantly thinking in this new way, right? And that's it. You don't
Yeah.
need to like kind of pop anymore. Sure, you can kind of slip back into things once in a while, right? But you snap back into it really quickly, right? So that's the simplicity, of this work, and also the power of it, right? And it is really the most powerful when you tailor it to exactly what is going on for you. And lo and behold, human design shows us a big, big piece of this, right? Why did I have this is not enough as a looping thought? Well, this bloody gate 58, right? Why did I have this addiction to struggle? Well, the gate's 38, the martyr, basically, right?
Mhm.
Like it enjoys the fight, it loves to fight. And it's like, I would always like, if there's a pride in the fight, in the struggle, like,
Mhm.
let's drop that bullshit, right? And actually step into something else.
Yeah.
So, again, guys, your human design chart is absolutely just a treasure trove of insights, right? And it can tell you what is going on, why it's going on, right? And when you layer it all together with
Yeah.
your real life experiences, it's the ultimate, right?
Yeah.
Are we reading
Oh,
Julie's comment?
I think so, yeah.
Thank you, Julie. She says,
Yeah.
yes, so helpful to remember our goodness, our greatness, our connection to God, the divine, talking to our higher self, our future self, to the one that knows, the observer who can remind us that it's not all that serious, that will survive anything. Yeah, we just need to remind ourselves sometimes because,
Yeah.
again, we forget.
And Eva, what's your profile again?
A 2-4.
Super. Okay. I'm surrounded by 2 4 6 twos and 5 ones.
Yeah, likewise, likewise. So, yeah.
Yep.
Any final thoughts? And do you want to tell people how they can find you and how they can work with you on their leadership and performance?
Absolutely. So I'm here on Substack. That's actually how I find Eva. I'm under the performance code, and really tying the link between performance and your human design. And I really work with clients. I kind of like build out the human design experience. So most people on the market are very good. I'm not saying anything, but a lot of times it just is kind of like, here's a report or here's an hour-long reading, which is a great foundation. But I find in my experience, after having done hundreds of analyses and working with people in kind of hour, maybe 90-minute readings, it's kind of like, okay, but what do I do with this? How do I
Hmm.
actually implement it? So I created what I like to call the frequency mirror. And it's an in depth analysis of everything we've talked about today. Like, what is your definition? What is your not self or borrowed frequencies? I call it. How do they work together? How do they work against each other? And then really kind of build out the experience of, we go in depth, day long, and to really understand that and then start to build what I like to call your frequency map is like, okay, what are truly the practical things you can start doing to play with this, to experiment with it, to go figure out how the heck this actually works for you. And then as a guide, I support you along the way. So having then, biweekly calls to support you and saying, okay, let's come back to the well. Let's figure out how we can refine things. And so it's being kind of a supportive guide along the way versus just like, here's your design, go figure it out.
Yeah, yeah, I can do that these days. It's obsolete. Like, the
Yep.
blueprints and just the pure readings and things like that. without the practical application and the real world like insights as to how we can use this to, in your case, help our clients like really boost their performance and actually have flow,
Yes.
in their life and their business. Like without that, it's pointless. And I'm really happy. And of course, you're using it and making it practical like that for your clients and yeah, guiding them through the full journey. So
Yes.
thank you very much. And guys,
Thank
if
you.
you're watching this as a replay, you'll find the links to Lauren's, website and everything in the blog below in the first sentence. So go and check it out there. Go follow her in her publication. Go check out my publication for all the human design insights as well. And then that's it. Thank you, Lauren, so much for
Thank you.
bringing all of this and this wonderful conversation. I'll see you in the Stellar Content Club. Lauren is in there with us as well, diving into the whole, human design storytelling journey. And I'll see you guys in the Stellar Content Club as well. And then until next time, stay blessed.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.